So I think we have somewhat a bigger crowd this morning than we usually have. And probably it's about the Shabbos program. And I want to encourage you all to take advantage. So you need to learn 5 hours or 6 hours throughout the weekend. And I want to give a revolutionary psak. If you learn 7 hours, it's not about Tosef. And there's a heter to learn more than 5 hours, Friday and Shabbos. So this week's Parsha, our story begins. Our story. Because the first two Parshiyos in Toras Hashem are about Odom Rishon and Noach. They weren't Jewish. They were giants. Odom Rishon Yetziah Kapav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But our story starts with the first Jew. And that was Avraham Avinu. And that is why it is only Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov that we refer to as Avoseinu, our fathers or forebearers. So Avraham Avinu obviously was one of the giants of our heritage. How many great things do Chazal tell about Avraham Avinu? Who could help me out? What was unique about Avraham Avinu? What did he do that no one else did? Or he was the first, let's say. He was the first. Hechnos Sorchim is a detail, and I am referring to great things. No. It's an amazing statement, but it's twice in Shas. Kedushin Pei Beis Yom Ches. Avraham Avinu knew. How did he know what the mitzvahs are? Ruach HaKodesh. He performed all the mitzvahs on a voluntary basis. Avraham Avinu Hikir Es Boiroi. No one taught him. His father was an Oved Avodah Zorah. Yitzchak had a great father to teach him. Yaakov had a great father and a great Zaidi to teach him. And all the coming generations of Talmidei Chachamim, of Jews. So we would expect Avraham Avinu to be blessed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a life of peace and serenity and shefa and a utopian life of bracha. It was not to be. Asora Nesyonis Nasasa Avraham Avinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put him to test again and again and again. Why was that? I will answer in another half hour. First, let's discuss the only mitzvahs to say we have in this week's parsha, and that is Milah. And we all know that in most cases, Milah is performed bismanoi, 8th day. But if for any reason we couldn't do Milah bismano, the child was ill, there was a medical issue, then there's Milah shelo bismano. Is there a fundamental difference between the two? Many years ago, I was asked the shaila. It's a bit uncommon, and I don't think I ever had this shaila more than once. Person had twins. Baby number 1, Yotzo la'avir ha'olam, he was born ben hashmoshes. His younger brother was a bit lazier, took a few minutes. He was born la'achat seisa kechovim, the 8th day, which has the bris first, and which is second to have the bris. Let's see the first source on our sheet. Shnei tenoikos lamor. Ein Shuvas Bris Avrom, al davar shtei milas b'yom echad. Achas mem sheloi b'zmanom yesh lahagdem lo mal zeh shenoiled mekoidem. V'kosav, dagam b'shtei milos b'zmanom lo yimotzu shim svora lahagdem davka lezeh shenoiled tchilo. So this question, two brisin, who comes first, who comes second, is relevant in 3 different scenarios. When both are sheloi bizmano, and one child was born at least one day before the other, the halacha is first to be born is first to have the bris. Because one of the fundamentals in Dinei Kedime b'Mitzvas, priorities in Mitzvahs, is a mitzvah that became relevant first, we need to be Makayim first. An example, Sifin Shechanoch Semen Shin Nun Dalad in Yoredeya. Chevra Kedisha has two people to bury. Who comes first, who comes second? First to die, first to have Kvura. First to be buried. And why is that? Because any mitzvah that became relevant first, we are Makayim first. And the kiyum of the mitzvahs depends on the sequence of when we're mechuyev in those mitzvahs. Famous story I told many times. And this is an important story primarily in Darkei Hapsak. Person once came to Reb Chaim Brisket to complain about the Chevra Kedisha, and he said he wants to call the Chevra Kedisha to a din Torah. Reb Chaim asked him what happened. And he said, my father passed away very early in the morning. And sometime later, another member of the community passed away. And for some reason, the Chevra Kedisha buried the other one before they took care of my father. So I want to call them to the Torah. And Reb Chaim was shocked. And he opened the Rambam Hilchos Ovel. He looked in the Rambam for a few minutes. And he said, they did something very wrong. But you don't have any complaint. Person didn't understand. If they did something bad, why can't I complain? He went home. He opened the Rambam exactly where Reb Chaim looked, and he saw nothing. Comes back to Reb Chaim and he says, Yelamdeinu Rabbeinu. I don't understand. If they were wrong, why can't I call them to the Torah? And what did the Rav see in the Rambam? I realized where you were looking, and I looked in the same place, and I saw nothing. So Reb Chaim said, it's a Sifin Shulchan Aruch. First to die is first to be buried. Yesh lehistapek. What is the rationale of this halacha? Is it a din in kvoid hameis, or maybe it's a general din in kedima b'mitzvahs? So I reckoned, explained Reb Chaim, if it's a din in kvoid hameis, it needs to be in the Rambam in Hilchos Ovel, together with all the other dinim of kvura, of kvoid hameis. If it's a general din in kedima b'mitzvahs, doesn't need to be here. And because I saw nothing in the Rambam, I concluded that it has nothing to do with kvoid hameis. It's a din in kedima b'mitzvahs. They're wrong. They went against the Sifin Shulchan Aruch. What does that have to do with you? It has nothing to do with kvoid hameis. And you don't have a din in kedima b'mitzvahs. You have only one person to bury. It's the problem of the Chevra Kedisha. And this is an example. Sometimes we need to understand not only what is written, sometimes we need to understand what is not written. And why is it not written? But I just bring this as an example. So if there are two kids that need a Milah, the one that got to the landmark of Yom first to be mechuyev, first to be nimoy. But if both children were born on the same day, whether it's Milah Bismano or Milah Shaloi Bismano, even though one was born an hour or two before the other, but Yom HaShmini is the same. And the 8th day in the morning, both are mechuyev b'milah. So the Bris Avram says, but the minig is, even in this case, to be mal, the first to be born. And I don't know why. Because the Zman HaMitzvah is the same time. Maybe it is Mishum Darkei Sholem. One family would be angry. Our child was born first. Why did he be? Maybe it's just because Eva, Darkei Sholem. If it would be Darkei Sholem, then if it's twins, there would be no reasoning to be Magdam one before the other. It is unreasonable to assume that in 20 years down the line, when the older brother would hear that his younger brother that's 5 minutes younger than him, and he had a bris before I had one, they're going to start fighting. That's a bit unreasonable, far-fetched. But the Dvar Avram says, I don't know why, but that's the minig, and we adhere to a minig. Question number 3 is when there are two brisin, shaloi bismana and bismana. If we follow the rule, first to be mechuyev is first to have the mitzvah, then shaloi bismana comes before zmana. But maybe there's another reason to be magda milah bismana before milah shalo bismana. So the Bris Avram, as well as the Yad Eliyahu, and these are two great achronim, both say, milah bismana comes before milah bismana, lo shalo bismana. And there are other reasons to override the rule, first to be mechuyev, first to have the mitzvah. And they write 3 different svoras why milah bismana always comes before milah shalo bismana. Number 1, todir v'she'enai todir koidim. Milah bismana is far more common than milah shalo bismana. Todir v'she'enai todir koidim. Do you agree with this argument? Could somebody question the logic of this psak? Does this have to do with todir v'she'enai todir koidim? I don't expect all of you to remember the Gemara and Zevachim, but you probably are familiar. Todir v'she'enai todir koidim is when we're dealing with 2 different mitzvahs. One is more todir than the others. Shachris and Musaf, for instance, or Tefillin and Tzitzis. Simachofei, the Shulchan Aruch says, Tzitzis comes before Tefillin. And the Beis Yosef explains, quoting the Nemuki Yosef, why is that? Because Tzitzis is relevant 7 days a week, including Shabbos. Tefillin is only 6 days a week. So Todir comes before She'enai Todir. But in our case, it's the same mitzvah, same milah. Would there be a difference between milah bisman and milah shaloi bisman? At the end of the day, it's the same mitzvah. Yes. Lechatchila b'yom hashmini. But it's the same mitzvah. Svara number 2, mikudash. When one mitzvah is greater than the other, the bigger mitzvah comes before the smaller mitzvah. Why would milah bismana be considered mikudash yoisa than milah shalo bismana? Because milah bismana derech Shabbos. Milah shalo bismana is not derech Shabbos. So that might be a reason to assume that milah bismana is mekudash more than milah shaloi bismana. That is svara number 2. Which is also interesting, and one might argue, milah is milah. The reason is derech Shabbos is exelis hakosuv. Would that be a reason to assume that milah bismana is more mekudesh than milah shaloi bismana? Maybe. Argument number 3. When a person skips one of the 3 tefillos, shachris, mincha, marav, there's a din of tashlumin. Which tefillah comes first? Chayva or tashlumin? You forgot to daven shachris. You need to daven tush moinesis mincha. Which one comes first? Who knows? What? First you daven mincha, and only then tashlumin of shachris. So maybe the same rule would apply. First you do milah bismana, and then milah shelo bismana. What's the argument against this? What? Yeah. Would milah shelo bismana be an idea of tashlumin? Or it's just, if you didn't perform it yizmana, you still have a chiyuv. There's only one source that defines milah shelo bismana as tashlumin, and that is Sefer HaRokeach, Hilchas Lulav. Who was the Sefer HaRokeach? Does anybody know? He didn't work in the pharmaceutical field. Was he a Rishon or an Achron? One of the first Chasidei Ashkenaz, going back 900 years. And he writes that Milah Shaloi Bizmanos Tashlumin. Even if we assume it's Tashlumin, is there another argument against this svara? So when both Chayuvim rest upon the same person, we say first Bizmana and then Tashlumin. But these two mitzvahs don't rest upon the same person. You know, a father is mechuyev to be mal his child. So the question I was asked is, oh yeah, both, they're twins. But the question the Achronim deal with is two brisin. One is Bizmana, one is Shelo Bizmana. So would the same principle apply? But these are the three svaras quoted by the Pesach Tshuva. Bizmana comes before Shelo Bizmana. Comes along the Dvar Arom, source number 2, and he disagrees with his psak. And he says, you write some very beautiful svaras, but you're off track. And the Dvar Arom comes up with an interesting argument, and he says, Milah Bizmana is just an issue of Zriz and Magdim and Mitzvas. But you have the entire day. Zriz and Magdim and Mitzvahs is not even a specific halacha in Hilchas Milah. It's a general principle that applies to all the mitzvahs. And it is only a lechatchila shebelechatchila. But Milah Shaloi Bizmano argues that Dvar Avram is a chiyuv gomer. And every moment that passes and you do not do Milah is a bitul mitzvah to say it's an aveira. And that is why Milah Shaloi Bizmano would always come before Milah Bizmano. Because Milah Bizmano, if you wait another 15 minutes, everything is okay. Milah Shaloi Bizmano, it's an aveira. And that seems to be very surprising assumption. Let's have a look at the Rambam, source number 3, and the Psak of the Dvar Arom is based primarily on this Rambam. Kol yom v'yom shera v'lo v'lo yimoyel. The child wasn't circumcised, and he became bar mitzvah. And now he's mechuyev. Every day, bitel mitzvah sasei. So the Dvar Arom says it's a mefurish Rambam. Bitel mitzvah asei. And therefore, Milah Shaloi Bizmana will always come before Milah Bizmana. Other Rambam, Perek Rabbi Eliezer de Milah, Mesechet Shabbos. וכל זמן שלו יום הלא יסוי ויהיה אורל, יהיה עובר על מצווה ססי שהגיע זמנו. וכשיום הלא יסתוס, אמנו יסוי סבלה. כל זמן שלו יום על עצמו, יעבר על מצווה ססי עד שיומר. So these two Rambams convinced the Dvar Avraham, Milah Shaloi Bizmana, with every passing moment, you're a mevatel mitzvah sasei. And my fundamental question is, according to the Dvar Avraham, Milah Shaloi Bizmana needs to be performed right after Neitzach Chamo, before davening, before anything else, because every 5 minutes that passes, you're over aveira. We never heard of such a minig. Did you ever hear of Milah Shaloi Bizmana that was performed when only the moel, the sandik, and the father were there? Because it was 5:30 in the morning after Neitzach Chamo? Never heard of such a minig. Did the Dvar Avrom hear of such a minig? I wonder. He lived in Kovno. I don't think so. If it would be an aveira, that is what we need to do. Fascinating tshuva noida b'Yehuda. And this is one of the craziest minhagim we ever heard of. Mechtova kibalti esmer balayla. Who knows what the next word means? Umochaz. Umochaz. Did they ever come across this word? In the Jewish, it's very common. Umoitzi ksav zeh, which means my messenger that I am sending this tshuva with. Obviously, the Noda B'Yehuda had no WhatsApp, no email. What else is there? I don't know exactly what it is. Instagram, what else is there? SMS, which is prehistoric. So the Noda B'Yehuda writes, I am sending this letter with a person that doesn't have time to wait. So I'm writing in a very abbreviated form, very short. He wants to leave tomorrow early in the morning, so I'm writing a very short tshuva. ולכן, הנני מיישה בקצרה. על דבר תינוק שלא ינבל בזמן וביום השמיני מחמס חולי, וכבר חוזר לבריאותו, והוא ראוי להיות נימול, ואביו רוצה לעכב למול עד יגיע ערב פסח. And the father wants to wait till Erev Pesach. Why is that? בהסתת הבכורים, ואוספה כל הבכורים לאכול בערב פסח בסעודת בריס מילה. There's a concept of Tanas B'chorim. B'chorim need to fast Erev Pesach. Did you ever meet a B'chor that actually fasted Erev Pesach? I didn't. So what's the minig? We make a siyum and everybody eats. But this town, there weren't many Talmidei Chachamim, and they were too lazy to make a siyum. So the B'chorim came out with a fabulous idea. And they said, you didn't do Milah Bismana anyway, so let's wait for Erev Pesach. We're going to make a big Suda. We're going to call it Sudas HaB'chorim, and all the B'chorim will come together, and we're going to have a big Sudas Milah. And the B'chorim applied pressure on the parents. Why not wait for Erev Pesach? Now, this letter of the Noda B'Yehuda doesn't have a date. I cannot assume that when children were born Chalamoid Pesach, that the father waited a year till next year Erev Pesach. You know, every Mishagas has some limit. You know, this is too much. I assume we're dealing with a child that was born Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and it's 4 or 5 days to wait, or maybe he was born after Purim. We're dealing with 2 weeks or somewhat. But the idea was, wait for Erev Pesach, we could all eat. We shouldn't need to be Messiah, Masechet Tanis, or Masechet Megillah. It's too much of an effort. And the Noda B'Yehuda says, this is crazy. Yeda, ki dover zeh ma'aseh meguna ma'od, lahashois hamitzvah afilu b'yom hamilah atzmo, shekol yom kosher, afilu ocha, zeh madim lemitzvos. Kal v'choy mishalo לדחות מיום ליום, אף שכבר נדחס בזמנו. שוב, כל היום זמנו הוא. יפה אסרת למול מילה שלו בזמנה בערב פסח, אף הם כבר מלאו והגיע, ערב פסח אסרתי שלו למוילוי. מטעם שראיתי שזה עצס חתוים של בכורים דלא מלי. ואמרתי שיש לגזור מטעם זה פעם אחרת, שמא ישע. So the Noda B'Yehuda comes out against this minig and he says, it's insane, it's crazy, it's wrong. Why push off a mitzvah? But he doesn't write that it's an aveira and it's a bitul mitzvahs asay. So obviously, if the halacha would be accordance to the Dvar Avram, it's not only wrong, it's a chet, it's a pesha, you're mevatel mitzvahs milah every moment. And the Noda B'Yehuda doesn't write that. I heard from a person who was quite reliable many years ago, probably 60, 70 years ago in Washington Heights and Broyas Keila, the Rav had a feeling we have too many Milah Shaloi Bezman on Sundays, and he started to inquire, how is it that we don't have much Milah Shaloi Bezman on Wednesdays or Thursdays, but we had a lot of them on Sundays? And he became aware that Milah Shaloi Bezman, the parents prefer doing it on Sunday because people don't go to work. And they have time. You know, the minig in America is to work. And as I saw, the minig is not to work. Minig barabata chashuv and poi. But in America, some people work. And Sundays, people don't go to work. So people prefer to have the bris on Sunday morning when people have time. We could invite friends, invite family. And Abraham was very disappointed. And he made a tekona, no milah shaloi bezmana on Sundays. And the precedent is the Noida B'Yehuda. He said, no milah shaloi bezmana on Erev Pesach. Even though they couldn't do it before Erev Pesach. Then you're going to do it Chol HaMoed. Do it Monday, but not Sunday. But this clearly proves that, no, it's not an Aveira. It's wrong, but it's not really an Aveira. Yeah. So this comes back to the Rambam. Let's go back to the Rambam in Perush HaMishnah. Kol zman shelo yom al atzmai v'yeh orel yeh over al mitzvahs asay she'egiya zmano. Ukesheyom lo isoi, tasur mimeno zot ha'avera. Once he does Milah, he no longer has an Avera. What does the Rambam mean? Mekanu lahabo, maika mashmalan. What's the Ravusa? Of course, after he did Milah, he no longer has an Avera. So what does the Rambam mean when he says, Kishiyom lo isoi, tasur mimeno zois ha'avera? And he writes the same regarding a gadol that needs to circumcise himself. He writes this regarding the mitzvah on the father and the mitzvah on the person alone. Kol zman shelo yom al atzmoi, hu over al mitzvah asay ad shi'amul, hu kishiyom al afilu b'achrit yamav, osa mitzvah, v'sar mimeno ha'avon. What does he mean, sar mimeno ha'avon? He no longer has an Avera. Mekanu lahabo, shita. He's circumcised. I think it is clear in the Rambam. Sar memenu avera lemafreya. No, it's not a bitul mitzvah say. No. So you would ask, but the Rambam clearly says bitul mitzvah say. Oh, I regret we don't have this on our sheet. Is there a Rambam Noshim available in this room? So the Rambam Perek Tezvav in Hilchas Ishus, we have one. Perek Tezvav in Hilchas Ishus, the Rambam discusses the mitzvah of Priya or Revio. And the Rambam writes, Hu ish mitzvah al priya or vio, u'me'ei mesayu ish neschayev b'mitzvah zu, me ben shvayesre. The Rambam's interpretation of ben shmoynes lechuppah means his 18th year, from his 17th birthday. V'kivin she'avro olav esrem shona v'loi niso isho, harei ze'oiver u'mevatel mitzvahs asay. Oh? 20 years old, and you're not married, you're mevatel mitzvahs asay. Is that an Aveira? And every moment? Like the Dvar Avram says about Milah Shaloi Bismana? What's the source? What's so special about your 20th birthday? I think there are some kids sitting here who are 20 years old and they're not married yet. So I don't want to scare you. Wait another 2 or 3 minutes and you're going to calm down. So what does the Rambam mean? If his 20th birthday passed, what's the source? I think everybody remembers the Gemara about 20 years old, right? Yeah? Ben Shimon Sechepa. Kodesh Baruch Hu Yoshev Mitzapa. When he strikes 20, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Tipech Atzmoisov. That's a gadata. That's not a halachic principle. We find nothing unique about 20. And the Rambam goes on and he writes, Ve'im hoyo oiseg b'toira v'torud bo. והוא מתיירא מליסי שכדי שלא יטרח במזוינס ויעטל מן התוירו, הרי זה מותר לאחר. But if he's into learning, and he's afraid if I'm going to get married, I won't be able to learn Basmoda, and I think this applies to every boy sitting in this room right now, whether you're 20 or not, then he's allowed to push it off. If it's an Aveira, Bitul Mitzvah say, a person is Oisig B'Torah, is he allowed not to take his lulav and sukkahs? He learns Belela Seder. Is he allowed not to eat matzah? Kol mitzvah sheyev shel asois yaladei acherim is derech talmid Torah. And if every day when you're 20-year-old is a bitul mitzvah say, what's the hetelim oisig b'Torah? So it is clear to me when the Rambam uses the words bitul mitzvah say, doesn't necessarily mean the Aveira of Bitul Mitzvah say. If one day passed without tefillin, that's a Bitul Mitzvah say. If you didn't eat matzah b'leil alav shel chag hamatzos, that is a Bitul Mitzvah say. One of the days of Chalamoid, you didn't take your lulav, that's a Bitul Mitzvah. As long as you can still perform a mitzvah, it is never defined as Bitul Mitzvah. So when the Rambam writes in Pri Orvi, a Bitul Mitzvah say, what he means is nimna melekayem mitzvah say. So the same expression in Hilchas Milah could mean the same. So when the Rambam writes, Kol yoim she'avar olav v'lo nimol, or in Peresh HaMishnah, Kol zman shelo nimol, bitul mitzvah say doesn't really mean bitul, it means nimna melekayem. And that is wrong, that is bad. But it's not an Aveira of real Bitul Mitzvahs, I say. And that is why nobody makes a bris a minute after Neitz HaChamo. No. It's not a Bitul Mitzvah. And Milah Shaloi Bizmano, if you push it off with 5 minutes, it's not like Milah Bizmano and you didn't mal your child, and it's already tzeisek rechovim. It's not the same. So coming back to our question, which bris comes first? The older brother that was born first, or the younger brother that's Milah Bizmano? According to Dvar Avram, the older brother. Because it's a bitul mitzvah. According to what we just explained, probably the younger brother. As if it is clearly Shaloi Bizmana and Zmana. The earlier Achronim say Zmana comes first. I don't remember what I paskin 35 years ago when these questions were asked, but I think today I would paskin differently, and I would say Milah Shaloi Bizmana comes first. Not because of the Dvar Avram, because of the fundamental minhag. First to be born, first to be mal, and especially the older brother is also a suffix bismana. It's not exactly shelo bismana against bismana. He was born ben hashmoshes. So suffix bismana, vice versa, vade bismana, I would say first the older brother. He was born first, that's the fundamental minhag. And the reasons to argue Bismana comes first, we had 3 svaras. Each of them is questionable. So this is not a very common question, but if it would come up again, I probably would say first to be born is first to have the bris. So Mitzvah Milah is one of the 10 tests. Asura Nisyonis Shenisnasa Avraham Avinu. And I asked at the beginning of this year, Avraham Avinu was huge, he was great, he was unbelievable, he was the first. So why did he have such a difficult life? The Balaturim writes, V'yohavto as Hashem Elochecha b'chol avavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol ma'odecha ve'ohavto is the letters ha'avois. Ha'avois. Chazal darshan b'chol nafshecho afilu noitlas nafshecho. You need to give away your life, not to be oved avodah zorah. How does a human being have the courage and the strength to give away his life that goes against the most fundamental thing in human nature? Kol asher lo yitein ba'ad nafsho. How do Jews throughout history, so many times, again and again, gave away their lives for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? It all comes from the Avos. So Avraham Avinu was put to test 10 times, and each of these 10 nisyonos was different than the others. None of them were the same. Avraham was tested in every difficulty that would be part of the human experience. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that throughout the ages in this long golus, we will be put to test again and again, and in many different ways. And those were the Asor Nisyonos of Avraham Avinu. And when he rose to the challenge, and he passed those tests, he gave us the koyach throughout the generations to do the same. The very first Nisoyan was Golus. Kodesh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu, go. Where am I going? Kodesh Baruch Hu says, you don't need to know. Pack up and go. Lech lecho mi'artzecho me'maladetecho me'beis avicha. Artzecho, meladetecho, beis avicha. 3 different things. One of the fathers of modern psychology, I don't like to mention Goyish names when I'm speaking to Heilige Bochum in a Heilige Yeshiva, but his fundamental axiom was, Ha'adam hu yitzur chevrati. Man is a social being. Lahavdil elef alfei avdalas. That's what the Rava says about Choni HaMa'agel. You know the story of Choni HaMa'agel? There's also a Goyish version of Choni HaMa'agel. Maybe some of you knew him, maybe not. A gentleman called Rip Van Winkle. And Choni HaMa'agel slept for 70 years. And he gets up. He knows nobody and nobody knows him. And he becomes so frustrated, he wants to die. And Rava says, O chavruta o mituta. That is human nature. And people are attached to 3 different ma'agalim, 3 different circles. A person's greatest love and affection is always to his family, his children, his wife, his parents, his siblings. Number 2 is his social circle, his friends. Boys in the yeshiva, you learn together. Guys that are sitting next to you in kollel, in the office, neighbors. And the 3rd circle is your nation, your country. Tens of millions of people died throughout history just for their countries. So Kodesh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu, Lech lecho mi'artzecho. Leave your land. Not only your land, the moladetecho, your friends, your society, your family. Leave it all behind and go. And he doesn't even know where he's going. But he went. And that is an asoyan we have experienced so many times. Goylo achar goylo. The wandering Jew. Golus, again and again and again. And then war, and famine, and physical pain. He was 99 years old, and he circumcised himself. And there was no anesthesiologist available at the time. And then Ur Kasdim. He was willing to give away his life. And the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate nesoyin, is Akedas Yitzchak, to shecht your own beloved son, Amid Bekulan, and he gave us the koyach throughout the generations to do the same. So you all remember a Gemara in Masechet Gittin, in the Sug of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, about a Jewish mother. Her 7 children were slaughtered before her eyes. And each of them refused le'ishtachavos le'tzelem. Before her youngest child is to be killed, she asks to kiss him. And according to the Medrash in Eicho, that child was 3 years old. She kisses her son and she tells him, Lech va'omartu la'Avrom Avinu, ata akadat mizbeach echad, v'ani akadati shiva mizbechois. What does she mean to say? Does she mean to say, Avrom Avinu, you think you're so great? I'm 7 times as great as you are. You were willing to give away 1, and I gave away 7. If that is what she means to say, that's right. Eino dem nitpas al tzaroi. Who can judge the pain and the turmoil of a mother seeing her 7 children killed brutally before her eyes? But nevertheless, it's not about her. If what she said is bad, why would Chazal relate that to us if it's wrong? If Chazal tell us what she said, we must assume that what she said is holy, is right. So my interpretation is, she tells her little boy, go to Avraham Avinu. I don't think everybody could just come into Avraham Avinu's room. I'm sure there's a very tough gabbai standing out there. And there's one after the other. And up there, money doesn't work. You can't give the gabbai $100 under the table and a shoo you in. But a child that was moise nefesh al kedushas Hashem, all doors are open to him. So the mother tells her little boy, look up Avraham Avinu and tell him, thank you, Avraham. Ato akadato mizbeach echad ubekoichechu agadol. You gave me the strength to stand in this terrible nesoyin. And in your merit and in your schus, ani akadati shiva mizbechois. And it is not only 7, it is thousands of mizbechois that our people sacrificed throughout the ages. Ato okadato mizbeach echad. And that is the same with all the other nisyonis. And that is why Avraham Avinu was put to test, to give us the koyach in all these different types of nisyonis that we have endured throughout this long golus. So there's a story I told many times. And many people realized that I very rarely tell stories. And I have a reason why I don't tell many stories. I will only relate a story that I know 100% that it actually happened. And I heard the story from a person, a Ish Neman, that heard it from the Bala Maisa. 70 years of brutal Bolshevism, communism in Russia, when it was a terrible offense to be mekayim any mitzvah. And if you circumcised your child, you were sent 20 years to Siberia to perish and to die. And many people weren't oimid ben asayin, but they were tzaddikim. Moyalim, they traveled me'ir le'ir u'mekfar le'kfar. Most of them were Lubavitcher Hasidim. And this moyal arrived in a town once in 2 or 3 months, and there was an underground system, and people contacted one another, and he got a list of all the homes he needs to visit to be machnes yaldi Yisrael lebrisoy shel Avraham Avinu. And once in a few months, the moyal came to town, And all the children that were born in the past 2 or 3 months, all the boys, he went from one home to the other and he did Milah. And I heard it from the person that heard the story from the Milah. I came into a house and I realized in the first minute there's so much tension in the air. You could cut it with a knife and I didn't know what it's about. The moment I finished the bris, even before I bandaged the child, the mother grabbed the child out of my arms and she started kissing him insanely. And after a few seconds or a minute or two, the mother handed the child back to the moil to wrap him up and to bandage him. And the mother apologized. And she said, my baby was born 2.5 months ago, and my husband didn't want to do the bris. And he said, I'm not going to put myself in danger. I'm not going to Sibir to do a bris. I don't think it's that important. After 60 years of communism, they weren't Shomer Torah. But the mother insisted, my child will have a bris. That's what my father did and my grandfather did, and we all did since Avraham Avinu. She made a shvuah and she swore she's not going to kiss this baby until he will be circumcised. 2.5 months passed. The lady told the moil, and I didn't kiss my baby even once. I choke when I tell this story because I just could imagine the scene. So she said the moment the moil came into the house, it became unbearable. So the moment the child was nimoil, she snatched the baby. She couldn't stand it. And she kissed him for 3 months. I don't think anybody did statistics. How many times a mom kisses the baby in the first 3 months of her life? No reason to do that statistic. But I wasn't there, so I don't know how many kisses that baby got. But this is just an example of Mesiras Nefesh of Poshet Yidden, simple Jews, not big tzaddikim. The husband didn't want to do the bris at all. Where does this Mesiras Nefesh come from? Avraham Avinu. And all the other aspects in which Klal Yisrael, this miraculous people, how did we make it through this long Golus with so many different nisyonos and so many different tests? That is the koyach of Weiss. V'ahavto es Hashem Elochecho b'chol nafshecho ha'avois, like the Baraturim says. Kol ha'hoilech b'darka ovis ani meskoim amora b'schus ovis. And as long as we stick to darkei ovis and we emulate their ways, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will always remember for us schus ovis and chazdei ovis. Biglal ovis toishia bonim v'sovei geula levnei b'neiim, and the schus of Avoseinu HaKadoshim, and in the schus of trying to emulate their ways and follow in their footsteps, we should all be zeicha b'kora b'yameinu to Ashnas geula v'yeshua b'mheira v'yameinu amen. Have a beautiful Shabbos.